Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm Jay Acharya, the CEO of Aspire Consulting and Training Limited, and this is the Becoming the Leader in You podcast. In each episode, every week, we explore real leadership stories, the successes, the challenges, and also the lessons behind them. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, and obviously share. And you can also listen to us on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, and others. My guest today specializes in helping senior leaders make good decisions under pressure, which is useful because most organizations still treat strategy meetings like group therapy with a PowerPoint. He spent over 8 years delivering management and leadership programs for UK government departments, multinational organizations, and major Gulf institutions across Saudi Arabia and the UAE. A former managing director himself, he doesn't just talk about leadership from a flip chart. He's actually had to make those difficult calls when the pressure was real. From strategy execution and transformation to agile, Lean Six Sigma, and design sprints. If there's a framework involved, chances are he's facilitated it, simplified it, and stopped people arguing about it in the workshop. Please welcome Alistair Stevenson. He's an executive strategy leadership facilitator. Alistair, thank you, and welcome to Becoming the Leader in You podcast.
Hello, it's great to be here.
Fantastic. It's always a pleasure having people like yourself taking time out, coming onto these podcasts and taking part in answering some, dare I say, some difficult questions maybe, or some easy questions, but it's all about you. So it's a varied job profile that you've actually got. When I had a look at your bio, there's a lot of things that you've been doing, been involved in. So it's an eclectic mix of roles and responsibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of it just comes down to opportunities are presented to you and you just have to take advantage of them, obviously with varying degrees of success.
Yeah, of course. And it seems like there has been success there. So let me go straight into my first question for you then, Alistair. The podcast is called Becoming the Leader in You podcast. So what does that truly mean to you, becoming the leader in you? What does that mean directly?
I would say that means that you're aligning your conduct with judgment. Not just knowing what good leadership looks like, but behaving that way when you're tired, you're under pressure, you're disappointed, you're uncertain, you're not getting the information that you really need. What information you are getting kind of seems a little bit filtered. And it's really reducing the gap between what you say you believe and how you actually behave when the pressure arises.
Wow. Okay. And we'll be talking about pressure in a bit, but yeah, sorry to interrupt.
Hey, no problem. Now, it's easy to have these really elegant views about leadership when everything's calm. The real test is whether you can stay fair, clear, approachable, useful, when you're tired, frustrated, and disappointed. And I think where I still fall short is probably in patience. Often I believe that I can see patterns quickly. And when I think something's obvious, I can become a little bit too blunt. Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes that's quite useful. However, sometimes it closes down the conversation far too early. Really, for me, the challenge is not becoming softer for the sake of it. It's learning when directness helps. When it can make things go really, really kind of horribly wrong. And also, of course, trying to remember that not everyone is going to think the same way that you do. What I mean by this is that in a lot of cases, you may get promoted because senior management wanted a showman. If you have a board of directors that's made up from extroverts, well, guess what? They'll probably want an extrovert too. But when you're leading a bunch of people, some of them will be introverted, some of them highly introverted. And they are not going to react rather, well to change. There was a study which was absolutely game-changing for me, and in all the excitement, I neglected to note the source. But what they'd effectively done, they'd taken a bunch of really highly introverted people and they'd put them in an MRI machine, one of these magnetic resonance imaging machines, which allow your brain to sort of light up and they can see what part of your brain's being affected. And what they found is that people who are highly introverted, who are going through change at work, the same parts of their brain light up as when a loved one has died and they're in a state of bereavement.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing as well, of course, is that when there's a change at work, extroverts, well, they tend not to listen. They'll come into your office, they'll start complaining bitterly about the change, and you usually have to tell them 5 or 6 times because they don't listen.
Yeah.
But because of that fact that they've had an opportunity to sort of vent, well, they've managed to release the tension.
Yeah.
In times of change, highly introverted people don't do that. I know it's a sweeping generalization, but you often don't know anything's wrong until they're handing in a letter of resignation.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because one thing I've personally found is that when you've got senior leaders who are potentially introverted, like you say, they have a reality or a struggle, not with intelligence as such, but they struggle with the noise. And it's those other noises around you that you've just mentioned, when you've got too many priorities or too many people coming in to blow things up, and too many opinions, too much urgency. And that to me is about when facilitation is good from that leader to be able to understand, how do I block that noise in order to enable the right thought processes for the whole organization. So
you're completely right. And what's really kind of alarming sometimes is that the change itself isn't particularly major. I'll give you a sort of like really simple, ridiculous example. You've been using Microsoft Office and you decide to use OpenOffice because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
And you go and you talk to some of your administration people and sort of like, are you okay about the new software? Yes. Are you sure? Yes. Well, you don't look very happy. Fine. You're crying. You're crying. Yeah. It's an allergy. And then the next thing that they've done is they've just handed in their resignation letter, completely out of the blue.
Absolutely.
It is, and the thing is as well, is that just because something isn't a big deal for you, it could be the absolute Mount Everest of problems for your team.
It brings in different types of pressure. So let me bring in a question regarding people you've worked with and probably the challenges you may have faced. So you've worked with MOD, so that's Ministry of Defense. You've worked with NHS. You've worked with Saudi governments and other global organizations. So when you've seen leaders falling under real pressure, what's the biggest mistakes that you have seen that are consistently made in making the wrong decisions, if that makes sense?
Yeah, well, one of them is panic, the necessity to be seen to be doing something, ego, that comes into it. Goodness gracious me, I'm the president. I've been to a really good university. I ought to be able to solve this. So rather than getting the team on board, it's a knee-jerk reaction where you kind of panic and go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, and I think we find that a lot in many organizations where people in senior positions who may have all that noise that I spoke about earlier on, they get down to that route of micromanaging. Let me go on to one of the questions I ask all my guests on the podcast, which is about you personally. And it's about who has shaped you to be the person that you are today, your leadership style.
Well, there's been quite a lot of people, to be fair. I suppose I've probably been shaped most by working in environments where leadership's not theoretical. Public sector work, healthcare, international projects, proposal evaluation, all this kind of stuff around crisis, that that your decisions have consequences.
Yeah.
And people notice whether leadership creates clarity or confusion. And that kind of shows up in how I lead, because I'm very interested in practical judgment, less interested in leadership slogans, and more interested in what people actually do when information's incomplete,
Yeah.
and when there's conflict, and when accountability is unclear, and when something's clearly gone wrong. And one thing I have found is that a coaching approach works wonders, because leadership can be really, really stressful. And you know that you've got to have to really tear into Damien from accounts the next day. And you're kind of rehearsing it in your mind the night before, and it becomes really, really stressful.
Yeah.
But if you take a coaching approach, it's far better. So rather than, good grief, why are you so lazy?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's holding you up?
Absolutely. It's that language change. It's the way that you've approached it. Do you use, or what coaching model do you use?
Well, I generally use various models, but I suppose really the GROW model, something which I kind of go back to all the time. But also as well, I think the most important thing is not letting people off the hook. You don't do it in an unkind way, but you just sort of try and elicit and draw it out of them. So, Jay, what I'm saying here is that you've got somebody who's running a project, and the project's a mile behind schedule. So you just go and okay, so let's look at what the facts are. What are you going to do to get it back on track?
It's making them
And
accountable.
then, so what ideas do you have? And the first thing that they will say is that they'll start blaming the team for being a bunch of muppets, and then also saying there's not enough of them and that they need a new team. And then, okay, so what better ideas do you have?
Yeah.
That's the moment that they actually start to think about how they might be able to recover from the car crash that they've made of managing the projects. So what else are you going to do? Come on, what else you got? Give me more. Come on. And it's that kind of thing. Whatever they say first of all, well, that'll be the most obvious thing that they'll have rehearsed as an excuse. And no, you need to keep sort of, eliciting. And whatever you do, don't give them advice, because they will never, ever be giving you the facts.
Yeah, of course. And that's why I always find it fascinating when whether it's sales, whether it's you're in leadership, there's an element of, once a person comes under that pressure that we spoke about earlier on, it actually exposes their communication or transparency habits, that they're not as transparent as one would expect them to be. And you see them massaging those truths and not taking accountability. So, which comes back to that coaching model. I have my own coaching model that I promote extensively, which is called TAP-C, which is about tell, ask, partner, commit. And it's taken away from GROW. It's about empowerment. And I believe that all the communication that happens needs to be empowered communication. So I totally agree with what you're saying. Never give advice or never tell someone what they need to be doing unless they truly need that sort of partner environment where you say, okay, you're struggling. What if I did this for you? How would that help you? And at that point, you're not giving them advice, but you're actually turning around and saying, okay, I can see you're struggling. I know what I can do to sort of push you in the right direction, but you still need to take accountability as to how that's going to help you or why that's going to help you. But you're still going to be responsible for your actions.
And also as well, if you think about Google, I think Google had a survey where they said what the number one quality of any leader at Google is, and it's the ability to coach.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think this is what we lack in leadership. Leaders are great at directing. Leaders are great at creating this vision, but then sometimes they have the wrong people around them to allow them to achieve that. And they might have people that they've worked with for a long time, and they're incapable of directing them in the correct way because of the relationship that they have, that it's not a corporate or a business relationship, but it's a friendly relationship, which is also that relationship outside of work, which does have a dramatic impact on the success or the failure of a project or a task.
So you asked me about what leaders have had a great influence on me. I think it would be perhaps prudent to look at the leaders that have had a great influence on me by me never wanting to emulate them.
Okay.
And by that, I mean Alan Sugar on The Apprentice and Gordon Ramsay.
Okay, tell me more.
These are role models, air quotes, who have taught a whole bunch of people coming out of business school that the way forward is to become aggressive, belittling, and try to insult people into doing what you want them to do.
So let me ask you another question about your beliefs. We know that individuals in our roles, in our positions, we hold a lot of things that we believe are correct, are appropriate, are right. So what's one thing that you believe strongly about, that you hold, that other people around you may disagree with?
Absolutely. I think leadership is over-romanticized.
Okay.
We talk too much about inspiration and not enough about judgment, consistency, and consequence management. A lot of leadership failure is not dramatic. It's just really quite mundane and ordinary. People avoid the difficult conversations. They tolerate ambiguity for too long. They fail to clarify ownership. And they also confuse being liked with being trusted. And then everyone acts really surprised when the situation escalates. And one belief which I hold is that good leadership is it's often really quite unglamorous. It's just having that discipline of making things clearer, especially when it's something which is uncomfortable. And probably the thing which I hold most true is this belief nowadays that management is a dirty word.
Tell me more.
That's really bad. There's nothing wrong with management. We need good managers. Otherwise, we have a bunch of visionaries all dreaming about a golden future, which nobody is delivering.
So going back to that question about your belief, what's the disagreement then? Where would people disagree with what your context is?
Generally speaking, when you're in the management roles, unfortunately, your input is very rarely used in order to come with the big visions.
Right.
There is a tendency that is dreamt up in some ivory tower, and then bang, there you go, off you pop, here you go, here's the plan, and then off you go with great detail.
But let me come on to something around pressure. We spoke about pressure earlier on, and we spoke about pressure when certain leaders might be impacted by it. But who do you become when the pressure sort of gets to you? Maybe with clients, expectations, or when you've set yourself higher expectations than you think you're able to manage?
Well, I feel that at my best, I become clearer and more focused. And I'd like to think that I try to separate noise from signal and identify what needs to be decided and who owns what and what the next practical steps are. But at my best, I can become a little bit too fast and a bit too sharp. And then pressure can make me really quite impatient with vagueness. That can really become the problem. So I think it's really keeping the clarity without losing the room. But I've also found that graded assertiveness protocols can work incredibly well, particularly when you've got the presence of mind to use them. So
what does that mean?
Excellent. So one of them is PACE. So what PACE is basically a protocol where it's you get it from clinical or high risk environments, and it's very, very simple. First you probe, then you alert, then you challenge, then you escalate. And it gives people an opportunity to be able to communicate their concern without going straight from silence to explosion.
You spent quite some time facilitating senior leaders across the UK, the GCC, Middle East, etc. What major differences in how leaders who understand how leaders from different regions approach pressure, communication, and decision making? What kind of things have you noticed with regards to that? And what do you think these different leaders from different regions could learn from each other?
Well, to begin with, it's got nothing whatsoever to do with politics. Allow me to illustrate this. You've got the United States of America, where they pride themselves as being the world's #1 democracy, and we're really democratic, etc., blah, blah, blah. And typically with a lot of American leadership styles, it is do things my way or watch your bottom. Whereas in the Middle East, which is not a democracy at all, you will have the leaders typically saying, all right, team, this is the problem. Let's sit down and let's see if we can work it out together. So it's the absolute antithesis.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get that. And I think it's our misconception as well of what leadership style in the Middle East is like compared to a democracy. And I think that's what people need to be aware of as well. I remember before I started working in that region, my assumption of the style or the practice of leadership there was very dictatorial, and realizing actually it's not. There is that let's all get into this together and come up with a solution. But Alistair, let me just bring in my last question for today. People always like having conversations with themselves about how they can improve themselves. So if I was to ask you the question about an honest conversation that you need or would want to be having with yourself but avoiding, what is that? What does that conversation look or sound like?
Yeah, really, I suppose it would boil down to what is the work that I really need to do here, and what should I stop chasing after just because it's merely available? Really, it's to make yourself more operational and how my actions will help me deliver the objective which I need to realize. Not in a dramatic way, but simply making decisions about what I pursue, what I prioritize, what I decline, and where I put my commercial energy, for want of a better thing. And I believe that your leadership is revealed under pressure, not when you're working in calm conditions. And that can be probably, anything. A lot depends on the environment. I mean, some people have these nice little roles where nothing really goes wrong and they behave immaculately. But it's how things are going to, how you're going to step up when things become unclear, when there's ambiguity, when there's a lack of clear ownership. And to be fair, it's often really kind of unglamorous. The team, things go well, it's the team. Things don't go well, it's my fault.
Yeah.
And you really need to be able to step up and be willing to make sure it's the team that's getting the praise when things go well.
Of course, of course. Alistair, I'm going to say thank you so much for your time. I think it's been a fantastic conversation, a great insight into how you work and how you think about the people that you're working with, but also how you've achieved what you have over time. So for anyone that wants to get in contact with you and learn more about what you can do for them and their organizations, how can they do that? How can they get in touch with you?
Well, I believe that you're going to flash up a slide,
You've just
tantalizingly,
ruined it. You shouldn't have said that.
which will have all my vital statistics on it. Oh, there you go.
There
Look
you
at
go.
me. Very photogenic. The camera loves me.
So we've got your details on there, and it is an email. I purposely didn't put your telephone number on there, and there's a reason behind that. I don't want people to do spam calls to you or anything. You'll just get spam emails now, if anything.
Exactly. Yes.
So that's fine. But what I will do is I'll make sure that everyone can see your information, and that anyone listening on the podcast as well, it'll be in the description section for them. But as for today's Becoming the Leader in You podcast, I'd like to thank you for watching or listening on Amazon, Apple, etc. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. From me, it's keep growing, keep leading, and mainly become the leader in you. I've been Jay Acharya, and my guest today has been Alistair Stevenson. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe. It's been a pleasure.